What's up, guys? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our videos. Also, make sure you follow us all over social media so you don't miss any of our content or show announcements. This is from Stevie. Hey, Jason, big fan of the show. At what point do you think the Celtics need Porzingis playing and healthy to be able to advance? I believe they need him against Cleveland as well as the finals. Boston's good enough that if Porzingis never suited up again this year, I'd still consider them to be the favorite. That said, it's just so much more in the way of margin for error when you have him out there. It gives you margin too for like what if Al Horford goes down with an injury for a certain amount of time, right? Or like what if one of your primary shot creators goes down, like someone like a Derek White or Jaylen Brown goes down for a certain amount of time. Like having Porzingis there helps. The difference is like the Eastern Conference is so weak that like Boston could literally like take the ultimate cautious approach this year and still get no worse than the 2 seed. So the Western Conference is different, right? In the Western Conference, it's like such a bloodbath where it's like you have a bad couple of weeks, you're in the play-in. So like there's a level of urgency that there's a lack of urgency, I should say, with Boston within the regular season that makes me feel like I want Porzingis to take as long as needed. And I don't want him to set foot on an NBA court until he is literally 100% ready. Not 99% ready, 100% ready. It's very different if you're running into a postseason series that starts in 2 weeks. You might be like, hey, if you're 95%, we want you ready to go in 2 weeks, right? But like I would take your sweet time with Porzingis. As far as like the specific matchup stuff, again, like we saw that in the NBA Finals in particular in Game 1 with Porzingis, where it's like his ability to punish mismatches at the elbows with quick like face up, post up stuff is just so valuable to beating switching schemes, which as we talked about, like you need to switch against Boston. It's the only way to keep them out of rotation. So if you have to switch against Boston to keep them out of rotation, then you can't, you have to hold up on the other side of it, right? So like mistake making is botching switches, giving up slips. That's when you're going to get in rotation. Now you're just dead on arrival, right? But if you do the right thing and you switch appropriately, you switch aggressively to take away the pull-up shots from guys like Derek White in the switch interchange, and you take away those inside seals, now it turns into a post-up game or an ISO game, right? And like Porzingis is just another way to attack in those one-on-one situations when they need to. This is from Lanzetta. Hey, Jason, what are your early thoughts on the Rockets' young core? They seem to be putting it together, especially Tari Eason and Men Thompson defensively. I did a little bit of a dive into the Rockets yesterday, and then I also broke down the Rockets-Bucks game in a good amount of detail with some film in today's show. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, I recommend that you do. I'm a huge fan of it, mainly from the standpoint of like where I see the game going. The Rockets are building around athletes, and I think that's really smart. Jalen Green, freaky athletic. Jabari Smith, great athlete. Tari Eason, great athlete. Amen Thompson, freaky athletic. They have layers of athleticism. It's like Cam Whitmore, super athletic. It's like, oh, here's Aaron Holiday. He's like a really quick guard, right? Reed Shepherd even brings a great amount of athleticism to the guard spot. They have like they went into last night's game with the Bucks with the 5th best record in the league. And what I thought was fascinating about that is like if you look at the top of the league and it's like, okay, we have Cleveland has best record, Golden State's right there. There's Boston, there's OKC, there's Houston. There was our top 5 records heading into last night's games. All 5 of them, freaky athletic teams that thrive in transition. And so I've really, really liked that build. And there have been extensive stretches of this season. And it goes beyond, when I talk about speed, it goes beyond just transition too. It's like, it's the transition game on both ends. It's the pace and space game on both ends, meaning like your ability to drive and kick teams or to handle drive and kick teams by containing the ball and rotating. But a big part of it is ball pressure. The ability to get up into ball handlers, be physical at the point of attack, make teams uncomfortable early in possession so that they're playing late in the clock and having to rush bad shots, right? Or fighting guys off a spot so that they're out of rhythm. That's a huge part of success on the defensive end in the modern NBA. There have been games that Houston's won with ball pressure. Do you remember the game where I don't even remember who they were playing, but when Tari Eason got the back-to-back steals and took it the other way for transition layups and then like literally laid on his back on the floor like huffing and puffing because he was so exhausted. Like they bring layers of guys that can get into the ball and make you uncomfortable. and it's a big part of what makes them so successful defensively. I just think again they came into tonight with the 23rd ranked half court offense. It's a lot of like depending on Fred VanVleet to create shots, and Jalen Green's decision making is still super sketchy. But so that, like, I don't think they're going to do much this year just because how limited they are offensively in the half court. But the direction they're going is one that I really like, which is like Jalen Green starting to increase his 3-point volume. Tons of athletes. We're ball pressuring. We're defending on the perimeter. We're running in transition on both ends. I even like the Şengün stuff where he's acting as a fulcrum at the top of the key. There was a Fred VanVleet layup against the Bucks last night where Şengün had the ball at the top of the key and they ran one of those classic like kind of screen and slip situations, and Fred VanVleet ended up getting an easy layup in the lane. They got a lot of good stuff that they're getting out of that. I'm a fan of Houston. I just think they're probably a year or two away from some of their ultimate goals. From Bill Stone, when evaluating players, how much do you take turnovers or assist to turnover ratio into account? I think it's undervalued. It's actually, ironically, it's one of the first things I look at when I'm looking at role players. Because they tend to have super low assist totals and super low turnover totals. But like when I see a role player that gets like 2 assists per game, but like less than 1 turnover per game, that's a big part of the drive and kick system, right? So like there are a lot of situations where role players have to make reads, right? And that's like the decision zone, right? So like you catch the ball on the perimeter, you pump fake, or you have a guy running at you, you beat him off the dribble. Now you're standing at the elbow with a live dribble in basically what's a 5-on-4 situation. That's a difficult bit of processing. You only have a 25% advantage there. You have 5 players to 4, right? So like you have your advantage and you have to quickly process where the next read is. And so with role players in particular, assist to turnover ratio is one that I track a lot. Now with primary ball handlers, I care more about overall assist volume early in their careers, because young players are going to make mistakes when you ask them to create shots off the dribble. And so with that, like a young player, a young guard, it's at 3.5, 4 turnovers a game. Some of that is just like the reality of him learning how to play at the NBA level. But like if I see a guy who's routinely putting up 6.5, 7 assists a night, that's a strong indicator for me. Like there's all this concern about Anthony Edwards and his playmaking. And I'm less concerned about it because I'm like, I want Anthony Edwards to score the basketball. That's what he is. Anthony Edwards is a scorer, right? But like when it comes to like last year in the playoff run, where he has an entire playoff run where he I can't remember exactly how many assists he averaged, but it was like 7 or 8 assists for the entire playoff run. When I see that, I go like, I'm like this is a guy that can draw multiple defenders and make simple kick out reads. And like that assist volume is super valuable to me in terms of like his shot creation. So in short, primary ball handlers early in their career are more concerned about overall assist volume. Role players, I really like to look at assist to turnover ratio as a indicator of their ability to make reads off of closeouts. All right, let's see. From Eric, what are things you look for during the season that change your opinions on teams? Man, this is a very loaded question. A couple things, like do they have an elite unit? Like if I have a team that on a large sample size is a top 5 offense or a top 5 defense, that's always something I take seriously. If a team has no elite unit, that's always something that I view as an issue. Like if you're middle of the pack on both ends of the floor, that's something I'm going to look at. Body language. The bad parts are part of the season. The Boston Celtics lost at home to the Atlanta Hawks the other night. There's a certain amount of that is just kind of like part of the 82-game regular season. It's a very long season, right? But I want to see those be few and far between. And so I always look at like how quickly teams get out of the dregs of the season when they don't have their motivation. That to me is why it matters so much to be higher in the standings. It's an indicator of just how seriously you're taking the night-to-night stuff over the course of the regular season. All right, let's see here. From King Tay, do you think in an OKC versus Boston matchup, OKC's lack of physicality with most of their guards could be an issue? I actually go the other way on that. They have a lot of strong guards. Like Lou Dort is a strong guard. Jalen Williams is a strong guard. Alex Caruso is a strong guard. Kason Wallace is a strong guard. My main issue with OKC in a Boston matchup is experience. OKC's got a lot of firepower, but their number 2 is some combination of Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, and those guys just don't have a lot of playoff experience. Boston, when Jason Tatum is getting spelled, it's going to be Jaylen Brown and Derek White. And those are just guys that have a ton more experience. And so for me, like I like OKC's talent matchup with Boston. I don't like their experience matchup with Boston. But I don't view last year. I thought OKC was too young to have any shot. I view Oklahoma City as a legitimate threat this year. All righty, let's see. Last question, then we're done for the night. How much does Quetta being the backup big hurt the Celtics? Do they have any flexibility to acquire an upgrade? This is something I've talked a lot about this year. Like when it comes to Boston and some of the obsession about their defense and like how, like, I think they were still top 10, if I remember correctly, coming into the night. I don't really care all that much about Boston's like some of their metrics at this point in the season because like when they're whole, they have Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford playing all their center minutes. And like they're keeping Al Horford's minutes down. They're playing a lot of Queta and Cornette. And like those two guys are like they're perfectly fine rotation backup bigs, but at the championship level, they're guys that can be attacked, right? And so like there's a certain amount of like it's fun. They've turned a couple of guys into successful backup centers that I'm sure a couple teams around the league might have more use for than even Boston does. But at this point in the season, I'm not as worried about it because like again, even if I was the Boston Celtics and I'm like, oh, Porzingis isn't ready to go for the playoffs, we're going to bring Horford up to 35 minutes and we're going to play Cornette for 13 minutes a night. I still don't think that's enough of an issue to make Boston Celtics fans concerned about where they can get from there.